All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we are back trying to make another video. I haven't made a video in a million years because I'm not playing World of Warcraft these days, but I still think about it every now and then. So, for example, me and Drakova are probably going to be doing a Pally cast sometime within the next few days. He wants to talk about Season of Mastery in general, and he's got rank 14, so he wants to talk about that. I'm watching him seal twist SOR into command with his wreck bombs, which is making me laugh my butt off. I'm just like, oh, that's fair for everyone in the game. It adds an additional like 120 in his current gear spell power damage to each of his auto attacks, which if you know anything about trying to burst people out of existence, yeah, so that's at least 600 more damage in a full wreck bomb. Uh, which is kind of gross and disturbing. That's what is that? That's close to like 11, 12. Nope, I think it's closer to 12. 12% more of a target's life. Yeah, 12. So if things were surviving with 12%, or less than 12% life, then now they're dead. Thanks to that. But yeah, other things I've been thinking about that I've been wanting to talk to Drakova about or just make a video on is I've been thinking a lot about toughness lately. Like 5 out of 5 toughness is just something that I always used to scoff at toughness, like, nah, whatever, it's not necessary, blah, 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 blah. But I've come around full circle to toughness is actually awesome. But today what I really want to talk about is 40 nature resist versus elemental shamans and how something as minor and as small as 40 nature resist might completely just totally shit all over the elemental shaman versus paladin matchup. And I've contacted Tal Rain on this subject to run this idea past him, and he actually concurs with me on it. He's been apparently thinking about it too. The reason why I contacted him is because he actually plays Elemental Shaman in Classic World of Warcraft, and of course he's a big-time Paladin enthusiast, so if anybody would know anything about, how Elemental Shaman works and its weaknesses and so forth and so on, he would, especially from a Paladin's perspective. But, what do I want to talk about full circle with this? All right, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about in my Paladin vs. Shaman PvP guides, I often talk about how one of Shaman's major weaknesses is resistance gear. Specifically because Chain Lightning, well, primarily because they're using mostly nature damage, and then you look at Chain Lightning, and I'm not entirely sure, don't quote me on this, but I think Chain Lightning's mechanics, when it's hitting a single target, it does a single full resist check, and then it does 3 partial resistance checks because it's hitting you 3 times. Now, I don't know for sure if that's how that works, or if what's happening is it does 3 entire full resistance checks, and then, if there's no full resist, then blah, 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 blah. And on top of that, like, let's say all 3 of the Chain Lightning hits do a resistance check, right? If the first resistance check is a full resist, then everything else that follows from it would not. It would be like a rec, it'd be like an auto. What the hell am I trying to say? Then if the first full resistance check succeeds, then everything else that follows from it, because the spell completely missed, it wouldn't happen. So I don't know exactly how it works, but I do know for an absolute certainty that there are at least 3 partial resistance checks going on in Chain Lightning. What this means is that if a shaman is doing a kill combo, and shamans have 2 kill combos, the one I have up on the screen here, which I do believe this is the imagery from when I made the Shaman vs. Paladin PvP guide. This combo I have up here is the most deadliest, which is why it's up here. But in reality, the combo is usually, it's either a Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Earthshock, with a grenade and or War Stomp in the middle there somewhere. Or it's what we have here, which is Lightning Bolt. This is Fire Nova Totem, and then the grenade, and then Chain Lightning and Earthshock. Now, if it's Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Earthshock, which is the more common of the two, and the reason why it's the more common of the two is you actually have to put 2 talent points in Fire Nova Totem in order to get its activation down to like 2 seconds, I think it is. And then Fire Nova Totem is not entirely 100% reliable. against a paladin, because you can be running in at them and then they put down their Fire Nova Totem, they try to stun you, and of course you can hit it with your auto attack if you want to, or you can just, hit S, or I guess it's not S, but you can just stop and stop running at them, and you'll be out of range of the Fire Nova Totem. Or you can judge and kill the Fire Nova Totem. Can you judge and kill Fire Nova Totem? Let me think about that for a second. I think that only happens if you're like in full tier 2, because theoretically there's a grounding totem around there, but they might not have enough time to put down a grounding totem. The Fire Nova Totem is difficult to use, and you only really see the best shamans using this. In my experience, I always expect Fire Nova Totems primarily out of Taurens, like Tauren Elemental Shamans, because they have War Stomp to back it up, and it synergizes extraordinarily well with War Stomp. Obviously, right, because you can put down the Fire Nova Totem and then War Stomp them in place, and it's 2 seconds, and the two things just combine together, and it's really nasty. So, yeah, but generally, when I think about an Elemental Shaman burst, I think about the more common one, which is Lightning Bolt, 2 Lightning Bolts, and then Chain Lightning, and then Earth Shock, and there may or may not be a grenade thrown in there. Now, moving past me basically just recapping everything that I've said in my Paladin vs. Shaman PvP guide, blah, 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 resistance checks, blah, one of their weaknesses, yada, yada, yada. One thing that's been on my mind that I did take into account previously, but I haven't really taken into account, is the fact that elemental shamans are unique in how they fight paladins, and compared to the other spellcasters, because they don't really have a soft reset. And I'll give you an example. So the other spellcasters are priest, warlock, and mage, right? And resistance gear has a completely different play style against those 3 other classes. You need significantly more resistance gear. You need closer to 100, 110, maybe even 120 resistance gear against those casters before you can really start feeling the resistance gear. This is, of course, helped by the fact that we have auras for all 3 of those classes, typically. But the reason for that is they either have mana drain or they have the ability to soft reset. And because they have the ability to soft reset the fights, right? Like priests can fear you and then run away and get a few drinks in before they have to fight you again, or they can mana burn you. Warlocks can very much fear you and run away and drink, and or just drink, period, or mana drain you. And then mages can do their stupid sheep drink thing. And this allows them to basically wait for a good RNG lay against your resistances, which really hurts the effectiveness of your resistances in that fight. So, for example, when I think about surviving a frost mage, their counterspell and so forth, I always assume that the first frost bolt that I'm going to be hit by is going to be a non-resisted critical hit, because they can keep throwing frost bolts at me until they get that non-resisted critical hit, and then they move in on their kill combo with the counterspell and so forth and so on, right? Shamans don't have any of that. Well, a shaman's situation is with a mana pot up here, with a single major mana potion, an elemental shaman has enough mana in the tank to basically only do 3 kill combos. And what's worse about that is paladins have bubbles, so we know for a fact that 1 kill combo is absolutely going to be nullified by, it's going to be traded for bubble, right? And they can't really soft reset. Them going into Ghost Wolf and running away doesn't really work too well, because, you can mount up. It doesn't lead to them being able to drink very well, is what I'm trying to say. And then you, as the paladin, have all kinds of ways of catching them. You've got frost oil, which kind of screws them over. You can easily put that on your weapon and then re-engage with them. You have speed boosting trinkets, speed boosting boots. You have all the time in the world to swap gear and swap trinkets and yada, yada, yada. Usually you just do enough damage to them, or you're just so lethal that they just can't get away from you in wolf form anyways. So they don't really have that soft or hard reset option against you, especially when they're using their stuns to help augment their la 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 la. When they're using their grenades and stuns and so forth to help augment their kill capability on you as a paladin. Which means that at a certain point in the fight, they basically overextended and they're all in. All right, you follow me on this? They're overextended and they're all in. One of you is going to die. It's now officially a fight to the death. No soft or hard resets anymore for either one of you. And because they only have enough mana for 3 kill combinations at most, this is when things like RNG management probably become super effective against them. So I'm specifically talking about nature resistance. I'm specifically talking about fire resistance. I'm specifically talking about Edward the motherfucking Pimp Hand Odd. So I'll give you an example. So say I run in on a shaman and one of 3 things happens, okay? Either nature resistance comes through for me and it completely fucks over their first burst combo to the point where I don't even need to bubble. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, that was cute. Nature resist just completely screwed over that first burst combo you had. Because again, just looking up here, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What, really? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, okay. No, 7 with the grenade. There are 7 resistance checks in this kill combo. 7 of them. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. So if you're running at them with, like, a fire resist aura, maybe even some fire resist gear, like, damn it, what is it? Hand of Ragnaros or something like that. And, yeah, then they have all these nature resist checks. If I have, like, 40 nature resist and a bit of fire resist, I'm rolling 7 dice there. And if anything comes up Yahtzee on any of those, that they no longer have enough damage to force me to bubble before I can heal myself. And specifically, I can judge them. That'll remove grounding totem, and then I can stun them, assuming that they're a Tauren and not an Orc. But then but you get the point, right? So if the stun goes off, awesome, and then I just heal myself. Basically, I can survive the burst combo, even if it is these horrifying numbers over here, which are the criticals. And if the resistance gear comes through for me, the shaman is completely fucked. Like, they are 110,000% screwed. You're just going to grind them into pulp. They used up their burst combo and it failed them, and they're dead. It doesn't really matter. Bubble's going to carry you through. The other scenario that can happen is the resistances don't really come through for you, but Edward the Odd might come through for you, for example, assuming you're not running at them with like a 2-handed weapon, wreck bomb style, that sort of a thing. But that whole lineup, that plays out differently and is just as terrifying for a shaman to deal with a little bit of nature resist gear mixed in. I suppose we can talk about that later. But yeah, so let's say I'm running at them with Edward the Odd. My nature resistance gear doesn't come through for me enough to... It comes through for me enough, or my stats, I suppose. The resistance gear in conjunction with my stats comes through for me enough that I'm alive and not dead. I might have had to use Whipper Root somewhere along the line. I may have even had to use a major mana potion somewhere along the line. And I might have even had to use both of them somewhere along the line. But I'm still alive, and I get the chance to, put a wreck bomb into the target with Edward the Odd. Now, if Edward the Odd comes through for me, and Edward the Odd, let me think about this. I think it's got like, it's 5.4%. Yeah, it's 5.8% chance to proc per attack with SOR, because it's 2.4% chance per hit. I can't remember. It's close to 6%, I think. And then there's like 5 of them. So yeah, it's like 30%. So there's like a 30% chance Edward the Odd comes through, and if Edward the Odd comes through, that's like a free Holy Light heal. If I'm not Holy Reckoning, if I'm Holy or Holy Reckoning, that's a free critical Holy Light heal. So I just shoot up 70% of my life, and I'm good. I didn't have to use Bubble, so another scenario where I don't have to use Bubble. Then, of course, the last scenario is that my resistances didn't come through, Edward the Odd didn't come through, and I'm forced to Bubble, right? However, that was just the first RNG lay from the resistances. So let's say I'm forced to bubble. Let's go through it in sequence. So if I'm not forced to bubble on the first RNG sequence. So I'm not forced to bubble due to my resistances. Awesome. The Shaman's dead. I'm not forced to bubble from Edward the Odd. Awesome. The Shaman's dead. Oh shit. Neither of those mathematically panned out. All those rolls of the dice didn't pan out. I'm forced to bubble. Okay, fine. But the Shaman still has to kill you, and now he doesn't have his free criticals anymore. You don't have bubble, but he doesn't have his free criticals. And so the RNG is still rolling, right? So if I was forced to use bubble in the first burst combo, the second burst combo might come out, and the exact same thing plays out. The resistances might come through, and if the resistances come through, the Shaman's dead. The Edward the Odd might come through, and if Edward the Odd comes through, then odds are good that this Shaman is dead. Not as good as if it happened in the first one, but since they don't have their Chain Lightning, Earth Shock, free critical, it becomes much more difficult for them to actually kill you, if that makes sense. Anyways, that's the whole thought process behind a little bit of nature resist. So I made some videos a while back where I was speculating on Holy Reckoning gear, where I ended up having like over 100 nature resist. This was like, you know, pre what the hell is it? Pre thick obsidian breastplate. There we go. Yeah, so I made a video on that. And I've been thinking about it ever since, and I'm like, maybe you can get away with 60 nature resist. Maybe you don't need 100. And then I thought about some more, I'm like, maybe 50. And then I thought about some more, I'm like, maybe 40. Maybe it's only 40 nature resist that you need. And suddenly the Shamans, there's just so much RNG going on in your favor there that the Shaman's going to get a bad lay somewhere. And Edward the Odd has been on my mind ever since I realized how absolutely broken Edward the Odd is against rogues and against warriors, because of the weird RNG math that plays out in that scenario. So, for example, I fought an orc rogue one time outside of Orgrimmar, very well geared, where the orc resisted my first 2 stuns. Like, my first 2 stuns were just resisted into this orc. And Edward the Odd refused to proc. And I was still able to survive and win that duel just because eventually, after like a minute, Edward the Odd decides, okay, I'll proc now. And a single proc from Edward the Odd, I've discovered, a single proc in Paladin from Edward the Odd in Paladin versus Rogue completely shits on, it shits all over the Rogue. Like, it forces the Rogue to do a 5-minute hard reset. Like, they just don't have a choice because they're just barely able to kill you as is, and the fact that you just instantly heal for 70% of your life, it's like, damn. And yeah, so it's really gross. And then of course Edward the Odd, you know, when it procs, it lets you do your offense. You can start stunning offensively as opposed to defensively, and it just starts snowballing from there and so forth and so on. So how do I put this? It's like there was all this RNG happening with Paladin versus Rogue, and it's kind of like, okay, well, am I getting good blocks, parries, and dodges against their attacks? You know, am I not getting good blocks and parries and dodges against their attacks, and is their shit critting me? But either of those scenarios can play out, right? So sometimes the rogues will resist my stuns, but they get a bad RNG lay on their heavy damaging attacks, like, you know, the ones that actually spend energy. I can't remember the names, like Eviscerate or what. Eviscerate, I think, is below 20% life, but I can't remember what the other ones are like. So they just get like a bad lay on those abilities, and even though your stuns are being resisted, you're still chilling there at like 30% life, going, okay, this is not normal. I must be getting, like, you know, a good lay on my RNG. And then you have those other scenarios where the rogues get really good lay on their RNG, but then you know, stun them and you heal back up to full, and it didn't really matter. You throw Edward the Odd into that mix, and Edward the Odd is just another player in your favor, where everything can be going wrong for you, but if Edward the Odd is like procs one time or procs twice, the fight is over. Like it's just done. And the exact same phenomena seems to play out with elemental shamans when you start mixing Edward the Odd with a little bit of resistances with enough HP to get the job done. So I'm talking like if you had somewhere between 4,900 HP and 5,100 HP going up against an elemental shaman, you have somewhere in the vicinity of 100 fire resist. You have somewhere in the vicinity, which is really easy to get. You can get that just from enchants and your basic aura. And you have something like 40 nature resist. It's questionable where exactly we can get that nature resist. Like, for example, I think there's a shield that gives a good amount of nature resist, and I think there's a cloak that gives a good amount of nature resist. But ideally, for fighting an elemental shaman, you'd want nature resist that you could swap into very easily without having to exit combat. But worst case scenario, you know, blah, 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 we'll just do this or that. So, but I think there's a shield out there that has some nature resist on it, and then there's, of course, you know, your enchants that you can have nature resist on. I have to look into what gear exactly you're using, but yeah, you only need 40, I think. Maybe even less, maybe 30. But it's when you start combining all those RNG elements that are at play that I think the shaman is just going to absolutely struggle against that. Now, mind you, if you go up to like, you know, 80 nature resistance, then it's not even going to be a struggle for the shaman anymore. You're just going to win. But the problem is if we go too heavy on the resistances, we might not actually be able to kill them effectively enough before they run away in ghost wolf form. At least that's been my experience. Not that that's really a problem, because Mug of Hurt and Edward and Frost Oil is just completely bones them if they try that. Or, you know, typically what'll happen is I'll try to kill them. They run away in ghost wolf form. They barely get away from me with their life in ghost wolf form. And I throw a grenade, stun them, I catch back up to them. But before I catch back up to them and I can actually kill them, they start healing. And so they're doing that whole healing thing while I'm, you know, beating on them with my one-handed or weapon or whatever at that point. And somewhere around that vicinity, I'm like, okay, I'm down a grenade. This guy theoretically can get away from me again. Now I got to go to a Mug of Hurt. Now I have to put on a Frost Oil and blah, 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 blah. I've also been thinking a lot about Edward the Odd's enchant. So I've been using Edward the Odd enchant on... I forget the name of my server. It was Asmongold's server. What the hell was it? Faralina, there we go. But I was using it with, la 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 la. Damn. Lifesteal. Okay, there we go. Lifesteal enchant. Bad idea. You don't need it. Lifesteal enchant's amazing. But as it turned out, I didn't actually need the extra HP from Lifesteal enchant. And there were many, 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 many circumstances where I would have been much more benefited from something as simple as Chili Weapon Enchant on Edward the Odd. And Drakova used to tell me about this back in the day, and I took note of it, but, you know, I was testing other things. But Drakova likes Chili Weapon Enchant on a lot of his weapons because what he does is he'll be fighting you, especially for the Endurance build Paladins, the ones that are going to be fighting for extended periods of time. Because when you get a Chili weapon proc on the target, it usually gives you enough distance for you to... You can either break contact with like a rogue, for example, or some other class, and you can get a single flash of light, is what we're trying to say inside that proc. You can also very much get a flash of light off if you're chasing somebody. Like, let's say you're chasing a elemental shaman, even if he's in, like, you know, ghost wolf form, and Icy Weapon decides to proc on him. You can literally stop in place and put a flash of light into you and then catch right back up to him. And that's kind of a big deal. But there's other scenarios where you're fighting, like, rogues, and they're like, oh, shit, let me try to run away from you now. And if Chili Weapon has procced, especially off of the Wreck Bomb when you turn and you hit them, if Chili Weapon procs on them, they gouge and run away and do a soft reset is no longer on the table for them. They're stuck there with you for another 3 seconds at least, and that can easily be the death of them. So if I had to do it over again, I would definitely put Chili Weapon Enchant, I do believe, on Edward the Odd. This brings us to... Chili Weapon Enchant, Edward the Odd, yada, yada, yada. There was something else I wanted to say. Right. Okay, there we go. So the other weird thing about the nature resistances versus the shaman is when you start asking yourself questions like, what about spell pen gear? Well, spell pen gear doesn't come out until AQ40. And when AQ40, not even AQ, is it AQ40? Yeah, when the AQ40 event starts coming out, you have the ability to get this thing called Thick Obsidian Breastplate. And Thick Obsidian Breastplate basically is, it's way better than resist gear. It is hilariously good against warlocks and all spellcasters of all types and shamans. Shamans struggle to kill you 6 ways from Sunday if you have Thick Obsidian Breastplate on. So 40 nature resist and that 100 fire resistance, that's just our poor man's version of a Thick Obsidian Breastplate. Once you get Thick Obsidian Breastplate, you basically laugh at them because they have massive RNG issues at that point trying to kill you. But again, the exact same phenomena plays out. It's like, I'm running at the shaman, I'm taking all this this magic damage. Sometimes Thick Obsidian Breastplate comes through and I don't have to bubble. Sometimes it doesn't come through, but Edward the Odd comes through and then I don't have to bubble. In all cases of me not having to bubble within the shaman's first burst combo, the shaman is dead. They just don't have a snowball's chance in hell. Yeah, then sometimes it doesn't work, and then I'm forced to bubble, but then I still have a Thick Obsidian Breastplate for the next, 2, 1.5 to 2 burst combos that are going to come out of this guy. And I still got Edward the Odd on the table, and I still have Thick Obsidian Breastplate on the table, and it's just a nightmare scenario for them. Yeah, but typically how you kill them, fascinatingly enough, is they run out of mana. And then they just kind of die. Because, again, they can't soft reset or they can't hard reset. So there's just this weird phenomena fighting a shaman. I know for a fact, all right, as a paladin, that if the shaman physically cannot kill you, let's say you geared in such a way as a paladin that the shaman, they can't kill you, mathematically, it's not going to happen. And at the same time, they can't run away from you because you're chasing them down with something like Mug of Hurt with a frost oil on it. Like Chili Weapon Enchant, Mug of Hurt with frost oil on it, so they ain't going nowhere. No shaman ever can actually beat you because he can't kill you. He's going to eventually run out of mana, and he can't run away at all. He's just going to die. So I know that on the extreme end of the spectrum for paladin gearing that we can definitely kill a shaman, but that's not where paladin monstrosityness lies. Where it actually lies is riding that fine edge of you being kind of killable by the shaman, but not really, or kind of killable by the rogue, but not really, or kind of killable by that frost mage, but not really. You know what I mean? It's like in your mind. It's like when I gear my paladin, I know for a fact that I'm gonna kill this person and I'm gonna survive with at least 10% life. Mathematically speaking, 90% of the time I'm gonna survive this matchup with something like 10% life. My opponents don't know that until it's too late, though, and that to me has a lot of advantages to it, and is the sweet spot for paladin gearing. Also, it allows you to, become significantly more tactically flexible. More accurately, it allows you to put more of your gearing into offensive capabilities, which makes you more tactically flexible as opposed to being a specialist gear set for combating X, Y, and Z. Don't tell Dragova that. He really likes going all in on super mega ultra resist gear and just laughing at people, but that's not really how I like to do things. I like to at least let them think they have a chance. Usually what happens when I duel people is they're always like, oh my god, you're so lucky. Oh my god, you're so lucky. You survive with 5% life. You survive with 4% life. You survive with 6% life. Oh, you're so lucky. And what they don't know is I've mathematically made it so that, on average, I'll survive with 10% life. And it'll be like the first 3 or 4 duels that they're telling me I'm lucky. But then by duel 15, they're not mentioning it's luck anymore. I just have too many hit points, or I just heal a little bit too much, or I'm just squeezing a little bit too much efficiency out of the paladin gear wise. And that just makes me laugh. I'm like, no, It's like watching Talrain run around with like, you know, five, or Talrain or Jakova running around with 5,400 hit points. That's a good example. They're running around with like 5,400 hit points. No, not really resistance gear or anything like that. They don't really use Edward the Odd. They just run around with a two-handed weapon and 5,400, 5,600 hit points, somewhere around there. Well, we know, mathematically speaking, that on average, the bare minimum that you need if you're not going to be running around with any kind of RNGs on your side, like, you know, nature resistance or thick obsidian breastplate or anything like that, Edward the Odd. We know from experience that 5,100 hit points is the minimum, is the absolute minimum. 5,100 hit points. So when they decide they want to go over that by 300 hit points, they're basically saying that on average, they're going to survive contact with the enemy when all other paladins would normally be dead by about 5% life. And it's shockingly effective. It's kind of stupid. Or if they're at 5,600 hit points, they're surviving it with like 10% life. And in my experience, is about 10%. 10% is a little bit overkill, but sometimes RNG can go crazy. So, both positive and negative. There's even RNG on the healing potions. So, you know, we prefer like a 10% life. 5,400 hit points for a paladin is phase 4 and above. So, no, not phase 4. Yeah, phase 4? No. Phase 5 and 6. So if you're an AQ40 and you're a Naxxramas, AQ40, you want 5,400 hit points. If you're in Naxxramas, you want at least 5,600 hit points. More hit points, the merrier. When you're in Naxxramas, resistance gear starts, thick obsidian breastplate starts becoming kind of a must. But when you're in like Blackwing Lair, it's like 4,900 HP is the minimum, and then we go above that a little bit, so we start talking about, you know, 5,100. So again, the reason why we say 5,100 hit points in, I guess I'm just rambling over random stuff now. We say 5,100 hit points in Blackwing Lair, but really the minimum is 4,900. But again, we go over just to make sure we're super alive, even for RNG purposes, and not dead against targets, which is where our power really comes from. And then, of course, AQ40, you step it up by another 300 hit points. And then Naxxramas, you step it up by at least another 200, 300 hit points even further. And thick obsidian breastplate really comes into its own under those circumstances. And like phase 1 and phase 2, so pre-Blackwing Lair, the sweet spot, the bare minimum seems to be somewhere around 4,400 hit points. And so we tend to try to get 4,600 hit points. That's, again, if you're not doing any of the RNG resistance type laying type stuff. When you start getting resistances, it becomes very easy for you to calculate. Well, I'll give you an example. So when I'm wearing my tier 2 gear as in Paladin in phase 3, right? I only have like 4,900 HP, but I have a lot of resistances. And so 4,000, I'm reaching the bare minimum HP, which is 4,900. And then I have some resistances going on in there. And I have Edward the Odd, and I have a lot of armor. It's like I got toughness. Again, I've got to make a video on that, or I made it. It's been in my mind. So I'm just looking at the situation. I'm like, yeah, 4,900 hit points is okay because I have some RNGs that's on my side. So effectively, I probably have somewhere between 5,100, which is the ideal, 10% over the bare minimum. Or I have even more than that if RNG really goes my way. And it works fantastically. 4,900 HP with some RNG that's on my side, perfect. If I didn't have any of the nature resistances, like the Reckoning builds usually don't go for nature resist gear whatsoever, but so they need to hit that 5,100 mark. And then and they need the raw hit points is basically what I'm saying. Yeah, so for elemental shamans, again, it varies on what state you're in. Pre-Blackwing Lair, phase 1 and phase 2, you need that 5,900 hit points. You need, but again, nature resist really screws them over. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. I guess I've ran out of things to say. I'm just going to end the video here. But yeah, RNG management, RNG management, people. So I was talking to a friend of mine recently about. No, it was Talrain I was talking about to. So Talrain is planning on playing Druid, which is the class that I'm most interested in playing if I wasn't playing a Paladin. You know, similar play style, stealth. I can ambush people. I can make life absolutely miserable for mages, which as Paladins you tend to hate. And we started talking about Soda Poppin, aka Chance, and I brought up an interesting phenomena that I keep observing when I watch the best PvPers and the duel tournaments, and that is a lot of them have very poor RNG management. And Soda Poppin really comes to mind when I think about a guy who has really bad RNG management in duels. And I made videos on this where it's like 30%, like there's a 30%. Yeah, so it'd be like, let's say if you're taking like 5% chances where you just die, it's like, oh, this will either go well for me or I die. Okay, what are the odds that I'm just going to die here? Oh, there's a 5% chance. Okay, well, you can take that once or twice or 3 times, that 5% chance. But if you're taking that like, 4 times, 5 times in sequence in a duel, then you're lowering your win percentage rather substantially, if that makes any sense. So, but RNG management goes both ways, right? You can see I got the brackets here. I got them if it criticals. And then I have the healing potion and the whipper root up here. And basically what I use the healing potion and the whipper root in the vast majority of duels, or the 1v1s or duels, is just RNG management. So, for example, if this lightning bolt comes in and it crits me, I can see that, and I can whipper root and counter that good RNG lay with using a consumable. I won't be able to see if this crits me or not because it may or may not be stunned. This one second, what the hell? Okay. Yeah, but you get the point. You just use these to anti-RNG management. As best as you can. But then you have to start thinking about how to really screw over your opponent with RNG management, which is why me and Talrain and Drakova, honestly, he hasn't had the privilege of using one yet, but every time me and Talrain bring up that thick obsidian breastplate is OP AF for paladins. We start talking to Drakova like he doesn't know, basically. And Drakova's like, listen, guys, I was the one who had this idea and thought it might be OP as hell before you guys, so shut the hell up. So even though he hasn't experienced it yet, yeah, I guess he was the original progenitor of that idea. But, yeah, so Edward the Odd is, for example, a RNG machine that can really screw over your opponents. Thick Obsidian Breastplate and Resistances is an RNG machine that can really screw over your opponents. Your block, dodge, and parry, and your armor, especially with toughness and stuff like that, are an RNG component that can really screw over your opponents. Having enough health, just raw health, so that if things just don't go your way, period, like you're getting a bad RNG lay and they're getting a good RNG lay, that you still have enough life that you're not dead yet, which is terrifying. Yeah, those are all the real nuanced secrets to gearing Paladin in Classic World of Warcraft that make you an absolute monster. And we had some interesting observations, I guess you could say. Like, anybody who's ever met me or Drakova always tells you get more HP. Get more HP, get more HP, get more HP. And we sound like lunatics because we'll be like, people will ask us questions. What about this piece of gear? What about that piece of gear? What about that enchant? What about this enchant? We're always like, take the plus 100 HP enchant. And they're like, are you sure? Are you sure that over more damage? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, seriously. Take the plus 100 HP enchant. And the whole reason for this is it's RNG management on your side. It's like you don't need the hit points, theoretically. Like on average, if you pull out a calculator, you do the mathematical average, you don't need those extra plus 100 hit points. You don't even know those extra plus 200 hit points. But when you do have those plus 200 hit points, over the minimum that you need, RNG starts going in your favor, and things start getting really scary for your opponents really fast because RNG can't save them at that point. So, yeah, really fascinating stuff. Yeah, it also gets weirder with RNG management when you realize that I might have 800 damage for a lightning bolt written down here, but in reality, every spell cast in the game, even at max level, has a little bit of RNG going on with it. So, for example, the lightning bolt doesn't do 800 damage. It probably does closer to like 700 to 900 damage, give or take. And then this is just, well, not even that. It's probably, you get the point. So when I actually scroll over the spell in the spell book, it'll, like lightning bolt, max rank, it'll say something like, does between 300 and 400 damage, or does between 350 and 450 damage. So every spell innately comes with some RNG management or some RNG to it. Fire Blast is one that really comes to my mind. It varies in its damage from 500 to 600. So those extra plus 100, plus 200 hit points, it allows you the wiggle room for your enemy to get a good RNG lay and for you to get a bad RNG lay and for you not to die from that. And that greatly improves your win rate. Just as a raw concept. But then you have these other factors where it's like, how do I put this? Like doing the Drakova or the I don't want to call it the Drakova style, but really it's the Ret Reckoning style. So doing the Ret Reckoning style, what the hell am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that if you go for HP, like just raw HP, like I'm gonna manage RNG through an excessive amount of HP. That works extraordinarily well if everything else about you is designed to kill your opponent within a very short space of time, right? But if you're not going to kill your opponent in a very short space of time, if you have my time on target paladin style build where it's going to be like a minute of combat or 30 seconds of combat for you to grind somebody into pulp. It's usually a lot better for you to go with the RNG elements, right? To really weave in RNG into your gear, so you get that minimum amount of HP, and then you weave in the resistance gear as well, because like we say in Warhammer 40K, it's like, the more dice you roll, the more mathematical averages are going to come into your favor. So the resistance gear and Edward the Odd and Thick Obsidian Breastplate and stuff like that, they really start to come into their own in those longer fights as opposed to those shorter fights. So for example, if I was a Ret Reckoning Paladin, 40 Nature Resist would be awesome. But it might not be as good as just, like plus 200 hit points. For example, because there's only ever going to be 2 RNG lays before either I'm dead or the Shaman is dead. There isn't going to be a third burst combo sequence. So the scenario is going to be either the Shaman got out my bubble on the first RNG lay or he did not. And if he got out the bubble on the first RNG lay, I may or may not be dead as a Ret Reckoning Paladin. Like, there's a good chance you probably still will kill the Shaman, but it's definitely within RNG that the Shaman can burst you out of existence, right? Like if one of these two decides it wants to crit above average, you're gone in the next burst sequence. Especially if, if you're not wearing the right trinkets or something like that, yada, yada, yada. So things are always going to be decided for a Ret Reckoning Paladin within 2 burst sequences when fighting an Elemental Shaman. And the same thing plays out with the other classes, right? Very, very short, very violent combat. So not a lot of rolls of the dice on the good RNG lay. But if you're more of an endurance-based paladin, you're going to go the distance. You're going to go all 3 of these burst combos before this guy completely runs out of mana. And you get a lot of time to work over the RNG of your resistances. You get a lot of time to work over the RNG of Edward the Odd. And then, of course, everything starts snowballing with itself. So it's like I get a little heal here, I get a little bit of healing there, or I get an extra resistance there, or a full resist here. And the next thing you know, you're just working with more HP, which means more time for you to get more RNG. That doesn't really play out with the Shaman so much, but it definitely plays out with the other classes, such as Warlock or Mage, or not so much Mage because they can sheep you and just fucking drink and eat, but definitely with Warlock and definitely with Shadow Priest. Big time with Shadow Priest. So, for example, you might be working over a Shadow Priest, and, you know, he Mind Blasts you, and it gets fully resisted, or he fears you, and it gets fully resisted, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, this is just not going to go good for you. Or Edward the Odd procs, and it's like, oh, shit, boom, you back up 70% life before they can even do anything, and they're just like, ah, God, kill me. So yeah, it's really fascinating, RNG management on the Paladin. I don't think a lot of Paladin players really think about RNG management. It's kind of the last bit of effort you put into your Paladin. It's like, first you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I even fight these motherfuckers over here? And then when you're done figuring out how to fight these, first you ask yourself, how do I even fight them? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, well, literally, what am I supposed to do? What is my what am I always saying? Line of plays. Like, what is my line of play? My proper line of play. And then you start realizing that your line of play is entirely dictated by your gear, which is primarily dictated by your hit points. The hit points will determine whether or not your line of play is even viable. My bad, not viable. Whether you can even do it. Like, will you survive if you do this line of play? That's dictated by your effective HP. Then the viability of the play to actually kill your target is dictated by, you know, your DPS and your damage and all that other stuff. So it's like, well, if you have low hit points and, like, you know, infinite DPS, it doesn't matter. You're going to get explodified. So that's not a viable line of play. Yada, yada, yada. But then when you finally get, like, you know, your gear is figured out and your lines of play is figured out and you know what to look for and you know what you don't want, know what to not look for. You know, if X, I do Y. If Y, I do, or if A, I do B. You know, blah 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 blah. If that crits, whip a root. If it doesn't crit, no whip a root. If that and that crit, then health potion. You know, blah 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 blah. But then at the final end is you're just thinking about your RNG management, and you're thinking about your RNG management. First comes thinking about RNG management defensively, and that literally is, when do I use the grenade? When do I heal potion? When do I whip a root? Possibly when do I bubble? You know, when do I go for a heal? Like, you're just looking, yeah. But then lastly is, like, how do I manage my RNG to screw over my opponents? And that's where shit gets interesting. Now, historically, there hasn't been a lot of options for us to manage RNG to screw over our opponents. So, for example, not a lot of ways for us to manage our RNG to screw over, like, melee classes. But then Edward the Odd is just that's a completely different thing that just screws them over horrifyingly, because it is an element of RNG management that screws over melee classes. It also screws over a lot of spellcaster classes. Doesn't screw over mage that much. You want a two-hander there, but against other classes, it's a nightmare. And then resistances is another thing that we can use defensively to screw over our opponents. And then Thick Obsidian Breastplate just comes in there and kind of laughs at everybody and really starts screwing over people. Yeah. So, yeah, still thinking about Paladin, you know, in my off time. I'm not going anywhere. I'm hoping that since World of Warcraft is owned by Microsoft now, that hopefully somebody will yell at Blizzard to come out with a no changes Classic WoW server. If Blizzard continues to refuse to come out with a no changes Classic WoW server that I can play on, then I'll probably be forced to go play on no changes private servers, because this season of Mastery stuff, man, I just can't do it. I can't handle it. I was talking to Jakova recently. He pointed out that in Season of Mastery that they recently increased the amount of gears that dropped. If you recall, when I made my Season of Mastery videos, one of the things I was absolutely furious about was that I had no faith in Blizzard to mess around with stuff, because anybody could see that you needed to somewhere between increase by 50% to 100% the amount of drops that you would get out of PvE content. Otherwise, it just was not going to be able to compete with. But I'll talk to Jakova about this in the Palicast. But it just wasn't going to be able to compete in my mind with the what the hell is it? PvP gear. There we go. And the tier 0 gear. Tier 0.5. There we go. Tier 0.5 gear. And I'm like, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. And this has just continued to be reinforced in my mind now that they've come out with. They finally increased the amount of items that drop off of bosses and PvE content, but they increased it by 1. Okay, well, I can do math. Like, I can literally go over here and pull up a damn calculator. Let's math this out real fast. Alright, so your boy here... Whoa, what was I using calculators for? Boop. Alright, so your boy here can do math. And back in the day, I calculated that it takes somewhere around 6 to 8... okay, clear. Thank you. 6 minus 8. I hate these calculators. Yeah, thank you. 6-8. All right, so my original calculations, I told you, I made this mistake when I did Classic WoW fresh. I went for Tier 2. I didn't go for PvP gear at all. And I regretted it because I didn't actually sit down and do the calculations on how many months it would take me to get my Tier 2 gear. And after sitting down and not only living through it, but sitting down doing the mathematical calculation, it takes you between 6 to 8 months equals full Tier 2 gear for a Paladin out of BWL. With a change of a single drop per boss, now it's going to take you between 5 and maybe 6 months to get full Tier 2 gear. And what the hell? Okay, that's interesting. So I guess I paused the video somewhere along the line and I've been talking for a while, but I don't know where I stopped talking with the video. I basically just went on a giant tirade about, what was it? About the changes to Season of Mastery. In the sense that they increase the amount of loot that drops out of Season of Mastery by like +1 gear per boss. And I've been talking to Jakova and Talrain about it, and we've been laughing our butts off at this, or at least I've been laughing my ass off at this. Because mathematically speaking, it takes you, if you had priority on Tier 2 in your guild, and you are raiding Blackwing Lair, it should take you between 6 to 8 months to get full Tier 2 out of Blackwing Lair. That's at normal drop rates. Giving us +1 drop per boss, now you're going to get Tier 2, but not rather than 6 to 8 months, you might get it between, 5 to 6 months. And still like, are you guys retarded? Like, no, you needed to double the drop rates in Season of Mastery. You're having the time, so at a minimum, you needed to double the drop rates, right? Ugh. Yeah, so before Season of Mastery came out, I had no faith in them knowing what the hell they were doing based upon the fact that they were not increasing the drop rates in Season of Mastery. Now that Season of Mastery has been out for something like 3 months and they're actually increasing the drop rates, but they're not actually doing it mathematically sound, I still think they're fucking retarded, and I still have no faith in their ability to manage Season of Mastery. So if I was sitting here and if they had come out and said, we're doubling the drop rates of Season of Mastery, I'd been like, okay, I can kind of work with that. You guys should have done that at the start rather than being freaking retarded, but at least you figured it out in the end. But instead, they've increased drop rates by a whopping 33%. It's like, yeah, we're going to have the amount of time that you're playing, but we're going to increase the drop rates by 33%. What do you think? And I'm like, I think drop rates in World of Warcraft Classic already suck dick. Now they're like, sucking giga dick. Yay! So No, no, no. Right. So the point I was trying to make is it's like I made this in other videos. Classic World of Warcraft's gear drop rates are designed for something like somewhere between a 3 and a 4 year life cycle. Let's assume a 4 year life cycle, right? 4 year life cycle for the game at the drop rates Classic World of Warcraft has. In season, not in season mastery, in Classic Fresh, not Classic Fresh, in Classic Vanilla, they cut that 4 year life cycle into a 2 year life cycle, which is why AQ40 got rushed and Naxxramas got rushed, right? There just wasn't enough time. So they cut it from a 4 year life cycle to a 2 year life cycle, but they kept the drop rates the same, which, is going to cause us all to have kind of a shitty experience. Taking 6 months for one of us to get tier 2 in Blackwing Lair, and then probably another 2 months for the next guy, and then like another month for the next guy, or maybe another 2 months because RNG sucks. Yeah, so, and then in Season of Mastery, they have the time again, but they keep the same drop rate. Like, oh my god. And you thought this wasn't going to be a shit show? Like, okay, sure, why not? So again, I have no idea where I pressed the pause button on this record video. Hopefully I wasn't missing anything too important. Just talking about, the importance of RNG management in your gear, how it's the final. When you start getting good with your RNG management in your gear, both defensively and offensively against your opponents, that's when you start kind of going Super Saiyan as a paladin. Well, that's not even true. It's like you go Ascended Saiyan. It's like, so Super Saiyan as a paladin is when you finally get enough hit points that you're not dying anymore. And then, probably, yeah. And then from there, it's like, okay, did I have enough damage to kill people? I was like, oh, I'm not dying and I can kill people? Like, yeah, now you're Super Saiyan Paladin. But where you become really monster paladins is when you start getting all the RNG elements in line, both offensively and defensively, because it allows you to really become death, if that makes any sense. So it's like, you start gearing differently. You start being able to sacrifice your hit points here and there. You start being able to squeeze out more offensive capacity here and there. It's actually really kind of fascinating. So anyways, I'm in the video here, and day is full, boys.